Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. I need a little advice from all of you out there in the hobby community, some guidance regarding something that I've been struggling with since I've been building my vintage baseball collection for 5 years now. And that is, how important are comps when buying vintage baseball cards? See, when I first started my vintage collection, I was really keen on looking at comps for a particular card, and I had it in my mind that I didn't want to pay much more than the average price for a card, and I definitely did not want to pay more than the recent high for a particular card. And I know I've mentioned this several times, but it's relevant to this situation here in that I have a limited hobby budget. So if I can save any amount of money on one card, then I can use that money toward another card. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there who have a lot more money to spend in the hobby, you're not just throwing money away and paying whatever for a card. So I'm sure this applies to you as well, regardless of budget size. I'm sure you want to pay, we all want to pay as little as possible for a card in our collection. Now, I know there are some cards out there, some scarce, rare cards, ones you may not see come up for sale in several years, that comps are, I don't want to say are completely thrown out of the equation, but what a card may have sold for 2 years ago, the last time a copy came up for sale, is somewhat irrelevant to what you're willing to pay for that card now. A big example that I hear out there is the 1949 Leaf Jackie Robinson card, that you can't really go by comps. There's so many variations in terms of eye appeal of that card, and when you find the right copy, general consensus is you try to just get the best deal that you can and don't try to go off of any comps. But I think those are the rare cases, at least that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the run-of-the-mill vintage cards, ones that you see maybe not at every table, but they're not hard to find. And this particular video here is timed such that the Strongsville is right around the corner, and I'm sure I'm going to be faced with this situation at least once at the show, and I want some of your advice on whether I need to change my mindset on what I'm willing to pay for a card. As I mentioned, I was really strict on comps. And if I came upon a situation, even though I got the seller down, if I felt it was too high above comps, I just walked away. Well, I'm wondering if I may be missing opportunities in picking up a nice card because I'm being too stingy in what I want or what I'm willing to pay for a card. And let me give you just an example to illustrate what I'm talking about here. Say a dealer has a card and the sticker price on the card is $500, and you look up the recent comps and you see that a card in that grade, so I'm talking about a graded card, a card in that grade, the average selling price over the last 12 months has been $300, and the recent high over the last 12 months has been $400. Now, I know, and it's something that I didn't learn early on, but that over time that I realized and picked up, is that for certain cards, and many, I would say maybe a lot of vintage cards, when you find a very well-centered card, one that has great eye appeal, whatever that eye appeal is to you, but if it has great eye appeal, say great centering, I learn now that you are going to pay on that higher end of the scale, because for some cards it's really hard to find a well-centered copy. So cards selling in my example here, say around $300, may be a lot of copies that are, say, off-center or to me may not have the nicest eye appeal. but and the ones around $400 are like, okay, those are the ones that are, say, well centered or have nice eye appeal. And let's say, so again, the seller is asking $500. The recent 12-month high for that card in that grade is $400. And let's say I'm able to get the seller down to $450. So he'll take 10% off, get it down to $450. Most often in my mindset has been, well, that's $50 more than the recent high price. That's more than I want to spend on the card. That's $50, say, that I could put toward another card. And there's just something about not wanting to be the one that sets the new high price for a card. And I know there's talks about, hey, today's what's the phrase? Today's overpriced card is tomorrow's bargain, or something like that, because over time, generally speaking, cards increase over time, and what may look like now overspending 5-10 years from now may look like a complete bargain. So I understand that mindset as well. But I'd like to know from you, if you had that situation where the seller wanted $500, the recent 12-month high was $400, and you got the seller down to $450, would you consider that a good deal? And say, hey, I got the seller to come down, and that's good enough that you don't, and maybe there's some of you that don't really look at comps at all, and just say, hey, $500, hey, I got him down to $450. I really like the card, and I paid him $450. Or are you sort of like me and say, wow, that's still higher than what the recent high, and you can look it up and say, yeah, at $400, that was a really nice looking copy. Why should I spend $50 more? Or again, are there some of you that say, hey, $50, that's no big deal if it's a card that you really like? So I'm struggling with, because I don't do too many shows. I do Strongsville and I do the National, but this also sort of applies to cards I'm looking at on eBay. Let's say it's an auction. Okay, how high do I want to bid? Or maybe it's a buy it now with the best offer. What best offer should I put on the card based on comps, or should I not? If I can get the seller down, 10, 15, maybe even 20% from what he's asking, that's a great deal, and I should buy it regardless of what the comps are. So I'm struggling with that. Now, with that said, for those of you who have been watching my videos, and especially the video from last year's National, you know that I picked up a great looking 1948 Bowman Stan Musial rookie card. Now, it was graded a PSA 3, and in my mind, it's a great looking PSA 3. In fact, the seller, when he had it graded, not too long before the show, he thought it was going to be a 4. It came back a 3. So it's a really nice example. And I ended up paying more than the recent 12-month high price for a PSA 3. In fact, what he originally had it priced at was in the realms of PSA 4. So he was asking almost like PSA 4 prices for that PSA 3. Now, I got him down a fair amount from what he was asking for, but he wouldn't budge any lower. And I forget exactly, it was maybe $100, $150 above the recent high sale for a PSA 3. And while I did buy it, and while I I absolutely love that card. I'm so glad that I bought it. At the same time, while I have all those great memories of talking with other fellow YouTubers and collectors about, hey, what do you think about this card? Should I buy it? What should I offer? What should I accept? And all that stuff. All the great memories and picking up the card, all that great stuff. I still remember that I paid over the recent high price for that card. And I'm sure if I look up the price now for a PSA 3 on VCP, I'm sure what I paid for that card is still higher than the recent high sale for a PSA 3 copy. And again, I'm not in it for money. I'm not looking to sell it, trying to make money. It's going to be in my collection forever, unless I'm somehow forced to sell my cards. So I still love the card. I absolutely love the card, but I still remember that I paid more than what a PSA 3 copy goes for. And again, I know that eye appeal with vintage cards, especially recently over the last year or so, I think collectors are really honing in on collecting cards with really nice eye appeal. Again, eye appeal for you, whatever you consider is a really nice eye appeal card. It could be sharp corners and don't worry about centering. For me, it's about centering, no major creases along the face or things like that. Just for whatever grade that you're buying, that it's a nice looking copy. So I'd love to know in the comments, where do you stand on comps? Are you really strict on comps? So when you're looking for a card, even if you can get the seller down and it's still above the high end of the comps, do you walk away? Do you still go ahead and buy it and justify it to say, hey, at least I got the seller down and I'm comfortable with the amount I paid, even though it may be higher than what other people have recently paid for that card? Does it bother you at all? Or are you really strict and saying, yeah, I'm going to walk away because it's above the high end and I'm sure I'll find another copy somewhere else? I find myself sometimes just getting, I guess, too strict to the numbers, those comps. Even when I'm looking at stuff on eBay. And there was a card that I have, I think I may still have it in my watch list. I forget, I'm drawing a blank now which card it is, but it's one that I'm looking at and I like the eye appeal of it. It's not a very expensive card, but what the asking price is, it's a buy it now and no best offer. So it's either take it or leave it. And what they have the price in at for the grade, they're pricing it almost at the average price of the grade higher. So I'm thinking, well, why should I spend that much money for a card? And I do buy the card, not the grade. The grade for me is a guideline of where I can look for certain cards within a certain budget that I have. But in this case, his buy it now price is basically the average price of the grade higher. So I'm thinking to myself, why can't I maybe look for a card that's in that higher grade and pay the same? If I'm going to pay X amount and I can get a card that has nice eye appeal and I forget the grade here. Let's say it's between a 5 and a 6. Okay. So it's a 5 and he's asking the average price for a 6. If I'm going to spend X amount of dollars and get a nice eye appeal card in a 5 or 6 for the same amount of money, why wouldn't I get the 6? So I'm like, so I've passed. I haven't bought that yet. Now, again, I think it's a $55, $60 card. Again, we're not talking about big bucks here. But again, to me, I haven't pulled the trigger because what I'd be paying for is above what a 5 goes for and almost what a 6 goes for. So why should I buy the 5 even though it has nice eye appeal? Should I hold out and wait for a 6 with nice eye appeal and maybe spend the same amount of money? So it's those things that just go on in my head and sometimes stop me maybe from picking up a nice card for my collection. And I'm sure I overthink this a lot, which is why I'm doing this video, because I want your opinions, your thoughts, your guidance on, hey, John, just don't get bogged down with the numbers. If you find a card that you like and you can get the seller down and you feel comfortable paying that price, which I think that's the issue right there. Am I comfortable paying the price? I can get the seller down and say, hey, seller's willing to go down on his price. That seems like a good deal. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, even with that deal, am I comfortable paying more than anyone else has paid recently for that same grade, even though it may have nice eye appeal? So that's what I'm struggling with. That's what I know when I'm at Strongsville, I'm going to see a card and this exact scenario is going to take place. I'm originally going to look at a card and say, man, that's way overpriced. Sometimes I might even just walk away and not even ask how far the seller can come down. But when I'm in a situation, say, hey, would you accept this? And he counters and I counter offer and all that stuff. And he says, hey, this is the lowest I'm willing to go. And again, let's say it's 10, 15%, maybe more off his sticker price. Should I say, hey, that's a good deal if I like the card, and pay the guy his money and be happy? And then look at the comps and know that I may have overpaid in terms of the comps. I don't know. It's something I've struggled with, like I said, for these last 5 years. In the beginning, I used to be able to get away with it. I'd be able to buy cards right around average comp, sometimes even below comps, and still get nice looking cards. But we're talking about cards that were maybe $30 to $60. So we're not talking about a lot of money, and the range between the average and the high was not that big. So it wasn't that much of a big deal. But if I'm looking at cards that I'm going to be spending $200 or more on, that's when the gap between the average and the high price, or what the seller's willing to go down, that's where you start seeing the larger gaps. And I'm looking at stretching what I have to spend at Strongsville or the National and say, wow, I mean, if I overpay $50 here, $50 there, $50 over there, that's $150 I could have used to buy a fourth card. So hopefully you have some great advice for me. Maybe it's just a reality check, a wake-up call to me to say, John, don't worry about it. Just buy what you like. If you like a card, just buy it. Or, hey, yeah, stick to your guns. You do have a limited budget. If you don't feel that you want to overpay, even though it's a card that you like, there are others out there. Just be patient. So I'm sure I'm going to get a whole bunch of different advice that may or may not help. It may even confuse me even more. But I really would love your thoughts on this in the comments. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.